Shalom and Bracha. The last few shurim we spoke about the idea of war in the Torah. The idea of war is, this war signifies that Hashem is with us. The Hatzlacha in war signifies that Hashem is with us. Ki Hashem alakecha v'salach b'kev v'chnecha la'atzilcha. That the difference between war, between Galus and Geula, is when Hashem is with us, He saves us from our enemies. He gives us the opportunity to live in our state. When He's not with us, He sends us in Galus. He gives the Umas Olam, the koyach and the power to be on top of us and to chase us out of their land, chase us out of our land, chase us out of their land, destroy us and kill us. And when we went from nation to nation. We're people without an identity, without a place. That's the idea of Galus. The idea of Geula means Hashem is there for us. We are under Hashem. The Umas Olam are under Mazalis. We're under Hashem. And when we're under Him, He gives us the koyach to be minatzeach, the Umas Olam, and take care of ourselves. And that is the difference between Galus and Geula. And we have, and this is what the Klal Yisroel pointed out, that all the mechamas were all hashkacha pratis, were nisim v'neflois. It was unbelievable. Hashem did a chesed with us after what we went through for so many years in Galus. He gave us a place to recuperate, we'll call it. And He's there and He's watching us and He brought us out of that long Galus call it slavery, of being tortured and being exiled from place to place. That Hashem brought up our koima. He's saying, "Mikimai afadal, stand up." He's saying, "Skoif koima asaych." Obviously, we're not talking about a Geula Shlema. We have to understand and see the small steps that we're taking towards the Geula Shlema. In last week's parasha, we had the 4 Lashonos Shel Geula. By Pesach Seder, we have four kosis from wine, and that to Miriam is in the 4 Lashonos Shel Geula. V'tzeisi, v'lekachti, v'ga'alti, v'lekachti, v'tzeisi, v'tzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lekachti. What are these 4 Lashonos Shel Geula, why we drink 4 cups of wine by night of the Seder? That's because the Medrash says, Matziel Salman would say it over, that there were, besides the Klal Yisroel one out of Mitzrayim, in Mitzrayim itself, in the Shibud itself, there were different tzaras. They killed the children, they shechted the children, they threw the children in the water, we were slaves. There were different times along the Galus of Mitzrayim that different things stopped. And each one of these cups are marumas on a different Yeshua from that tzara which stopped. And we have to recognize it, that within the big shlemus of the Geula of Mitzrayim, there were also baby steps towards the Geula Shlema. And that's the idea of the 4 kosis. And we also we have to understand that there are steps towards the Geula Shlema, and we have to recognize that. And that's why I want to talk about a drop, focus on this thing of understanding these different steps for the Geula. It's actually a much longer talk. I'm not going to talk about it now. This will probably be a few shurim in that. But we'll touch on to that, and we'll touch on to mainly, Bez Hashem, the idea of it's difficult to digest the change. Basically, the things that we spoke about, that we saw from Klal Yisroel about the war and the Shekhinah is with us, and it's us to machkesh these nisim, is really huge ideas, which is hard to digest. And the reason why it's hard to digest is because we're not used to this hanhaga from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and we're used to, as we spoke, that's why we look at the war along the Galus all along, very, very negative, and as no milo to it. And that's because we're like slaves. And we can get back to the idea. So the idea over here is that we have to start being receptive to a new hanhag, which Rebbeinu Shalom started with the world. He started a new hanhag with Klal Yisroel, the whole world, and we're specifically focusing now on Klal Yisroel. And that's why it's so hard to digest this whole discussion. So I want to focus a little bit on this. Chazal say that it says in Yeshaya, Yisusam mitba v'tzia v'sogel ha'arava v'sifach kavatzelas. The pasuk says that in times of the Geula, the Eibishter is going to make happy and exciting the deserts and places which things don't grow good. It's going to grow good, and it's going to grow very beautiful stuff. And we're going to come to see Proyach Tifrach v'sogel av gila zeranen kvoid alavonen nitin lo hadar hakam v'lashonen heimo yireh kvoid Hashem hadar alakenu. The idea over here, the Navi, the Medrash Nahum explains that there's going to be steps in times of the Geula. That first, there's going to be midbar, desolate. Israel's going to be desolate. It's going to become exciting. Things are going to start growing. Things are going to start building. And then later, it's going to be the Beis Hamikdash, the Levana is going to be built. And then later, it's going to be Kvoid Hashem Elkeinu. The Medrash says, what's the pasuk trying to tell you? In the time when Hashem is going to be Megala Shechina to Klal Yisroel, he's not going to show himself on them at once. They can't stand. Klal Yisroel went through such a hard gullus, and it's not possible for them to absorb so much good at once, to bring the Geula Shlema at 1 second. That's why he's not going to show himself in 1 second. If he's going to show all his greatness and his beauty and his taiva at once, they're all going to die. Everyone's going to die. We can't handle it. Chazal say, go learn from Yosef. After a few years, after 22 years, Yosef comes and he says, Ani Yechem. And they all couldn't say anything. And they couldn't. They almost died. They died. Lashon HaMedrash is Mesu Kulam. They all died, and they couldn't answer him. After that shock from not having Yosef and searching for Yosef, and all of a sudden Yosef showing him, they all the neshama went out. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after all this long gullus, is going to come and show himself to us. Alachas kama v'kama. So the Medrash, Alamah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yosef, what Hashem going to do? Mizgal lehem kima kimo. He's going to show himself little by little. In the beginning, he's going to make the midbar grow a little bit. And then he's going to make the places that are growing a little bit grow even more. And it's going to go higher and higher, and the Medrash goes on until you're going to see Kvoid Hashem. The Medrash, the Yishalmi says that there was two Tanoim, they were walking in the valley, and it was in the morning, and the sun started coming up little by little by little. And Rav Huna told the Rabbi, Rav Huna Rabbi told Shimon ben Rebbe, Kachi Geulusan Shal Yisrael. This is the way the Geula from the Klal Yisroel is going to be. Betchila in the beginning, Kim was going to be a little bit. Kol Shem Ha'ileches. The more we get closer to the Geula, Rabba Ha'ileches gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Ki Eshev Ha'choshech Hashem early. When if I'm in, we brought on the pasuk, if I'm in the dark, Hashem is going to be my light. It means slowly but surely the light's going to get stronger and stronger. The Medrash Shochetov says, Magdal Yishis Malkai. One place it says Migdal, one place it says Magdal. What's Magdal Yishis? Eivish is going to make the Yeshus get bigger and bigger. Zuk the Medrash, Lefisha Ein Geula Shel Umazi Bab Vasachas. The Geula is not going to come at once. Elokim only a little bit. Shehim is Gadelas Vahileches gets bigger and bigger than Israel. Why? Fishehin Achshav Shruim B'Tzaras Gedolas. Right now they're in tremendous tzaras. If Tovei Hagula Basachas, if the Gula comes in 1 second, Einin Chayim Lizbal Yishi Gedola Shibo B'Tech Tzaras Gedolas. Now let's take for to analyze this. Even if in the times of the Rambam or in the times of the Inquisition and all these what Klal Yisroel went, if it would change from 1 second to where we're living right now, they wouldn't be able to sustain that either. It's too big of a change. If all of a sudden all the technology and all the shefa and all the brach and all the food, if people were starving and weren't living long, they weren't gesund, and there was the average life wasn't the amount that we live. And all of a sudden, everything changes over in a split second to the way we're living. they wouldn't be able to handle it. It's almost like someone that wins a lottery ticket, and it's famous that people that won the lottery ticket, their money didn't last. They didn't last. It was a disaster. And what's the reason? Is because the nature of a person is he can't handle such a big, to transfer so much. So Chazal is saying that's yes. So it has to come with a process. The Gula doesn't come slowly but surely. It's in a process. And this is where I want to focus more on, because on this talk of the process is a much more long discussion. But again, I want to discuss on how it's hard to absorb a lot of the things that we're speaking because of this process. And I want to focus on the hard part of absorbing this. The Chofetz Chaim brought down in the Sefer Beis Hashever, B'Shem Shua brings down from the Chofetz Chaim. Zechisi lekabel pnei tzadik ador. I was zeichit to be mekabel tzadik ador. Rabban shel Klal Yisroel, the Rebbe from all the Yidden, Meron hagoyin hakodesh bal Chofetz Chaim, zeichit tzadik kodesh levracha, v'lovaka b'cholei. And I heard from the Chofetz Chaim, there's no suffix that we're now in the Krisim Meshicha. And he goes on and on about this, the Krisim Meshicha. And he says, I heard different stuff. And one thing I'm going to repeat now over here. He says that when the times of the Geula, it's not going to be so simple to feel the Geula coming. He says, the man, as we know, was, everyone tasted based on what he wanted. There was no set taste for the man. You wanted to have peanut juice, tastes like peanut juice. You wanted to have watermelon, tastes like watermelon. You wanted to have it tastes like bread, it tastes like bread. You wanted to have steak, it tastes like steak. And all different types of taste. But what happens if he didn't think? Was ist das time given? How did it taste? The Chofetz Chaim said, it must be that it didn't taste. it was tasteless. Zok the Chofetz Chaim that the same thing is going to be when Mashiach comes. Mamash k'moizeti b'yes Mashiach. Mamash like this is going to be Mashiach. He is gal z'ashchinu, and the shchinu is being gal ha'olam. V'yimolek kol ha'oretz deis Hashem. And he said it's going to be totally in the hagosha of people that are thinking. B'midas ha'azboinish shel kol echad v'echad. Whoever's not going to be mizboin in Mashiach, he won't feel anything. In order to understand that Mashiach is coming, it's coming so slow. The Geula is coming so slow. Just going to say over from the Tzemach Tzedek, they spoke about the Schalta Geula. I'm not going to get into that discussion. He said Schalta Geula started from Yitzchak Avinu. There's a process going on. We're in the middle of a process. It's very slow, or the process is going on. And the Chofetz Chaim said that if you're not going to be this boinen, you won't understand that he's coming. The Sefer Kol Torah says a good word. The Medrash says, we just mentioned the Medrash that says that the Shvatim didn't, almost, the Neshama left because of when he said Ani Yosef. It was such a shock to them. So too, the Geula has to come slowly. So the Sefer Kol Torah says, Vayaki Yosef, it says in the pasuk before that he said who he is, that he realized them, but they didn't realize him. Vayaki Yosef is Echav, V'hem Lekiru. They realized Yosef, but Yosef realized them, but they didn't realize Yosef. Yosef is Merumaz on the Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef comes before Mashiach ben David. And he says that Mashiach ben Yosef is not recognized. People don't recognize that he's here. It's something which is kibbutz galuyos. It's slowly but surely people come. It's a process. It's a process which a lot of tzaris and zachim. It's like it doesn't seem to be Mashiach, but the things are under the ground. Things are cooking. And we spoke about this idea of why it's so hard for us to process the what's going on. Is the Rambam? We said over the Rambam. The Rambam says the reason why the Hashem had to take Yidden out in the midbar for 40 years and only afterwards bring them to Israel, because they were slaves. They weren't used to being free people, and they didn't appreciate the free life. They didn't know how to fight a war. They couldn't, after being for 210 years being slaves, they didn't know how to fight a war. And Hashem doesn't make Nissen just take a person and change his nature. He took them and taught them. Vayasev Elokim, so derech midbar. Hashem took them in the midbar in order to teach them, be margal them, what it means to be a free nation, to have the experience, have what you need, and build yourself up. Actually, we learned the Chiyav HaSeva. The Rambam doesn't say that, but the Chiyav HaSeva is learned from Vayasev. Hashem made them do in the Midbar, Medrash says that they made them sit by Seva. The first thing he did was what? He took them in the Midbar, he made them sit like rich people that leaned over. So the idea over here is Hashem was teaching them to be free people. You have to start slowly changing yourself, recognizing there's a whole new mahalach in the world. And the Ebenezer says that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was grown up by the king's palace, by Paro, is because he shouldn't have that slavery mentality, because he wouldn't be able to take you out of a gullus. He had to have a free, kingly mentality in order to face Paro and fight him. And he says the Yidden why it ran after they left the Mitzrayim. We see after they left the Mitzrayim, they still wanted to go back. The whole time in the middle, they wanted to go back. They wanted to go back to their boss. Hashem took you out, made so much nissen. Because once a slave, always a slave. It's hard to take out the gullus from the Yid with the Yid from the gullus. Because that's the mentality. And Meshech Chachma says that was the reason that when they didn't believe, they didn't believe that the Hashem take them into the Eretz Yisrael right away. When was the Gzeira of 40 years done? By the Meraglim. They didn't believe Hashem will do the war and kill out the nations of Eretz Yisrael for them. So the Meshech Chachma explains, because they were looking at it from a tivistic way, from a tevetic way, that in Ba'ifan Tivi, it's true that they can't win. They were all slaves, and they were not built for this, and they were the nations of Eretz Yisrael were powerful nations, and they saw they couldn't do that naturally, and that's why they complained. Really, they were supposed to go to Eretz Yisrael, like they were supposed to go out, like they went out of Mitzrayim, but they didn't do anything. But because they were complaining that they're not going to be able to go in a natural way, so Hashem says, you want to go in a natural way? So slaves can't go anywhere. You have to wait 40 years in order for you to go in. So that was the discussion. So from here we see what it means. Is that we were such a long time in Gullus, we're used to these ways, and it's hard to get used to. It's hard to adapt to the new nature, which is coming slowly. And actually, we find the David HaMelech refers to this Metzias that we're going through right now. It says in Tehillim, in Perik as Tzadikai, Al takshe levavchem kemeriva, don't harden your heart, like when the Kiyei Masim Amidba, in the time when Yidden were by the Meraglim, when they and all the tests that they did, they tested Hashem, the Sor Nisyanis, Asher Nesini Aveseichem, that your fathers tested me, they tested me, even though they saw all the things I did. So the Masha, Sanhedrin, the Sadik Test, and the Yavitz, on Kabbalah Shabbos and the Siddur, they both say this idea that that this psukim from David HaMelech is going in the times of the Gula Shleima, that David HaMelech saw that there's going to be in the times of the Gula, there's going to be people that are not going to believe in the Nissim, just like they didn't believe in the Nissim of Tzis and Tzrayim. What does it mean didn't believe? They didn't believe, they didn't absorb it, they weren't living that new hanhaga that the Bnei Shem took them out with. They couldn't live up to it. They couldn't live up to the new hanhaga, and they saw everything, but they were stuck into their old ways. And Zok the Yavitz, he saw in Nevuah that there's going to be people that are not going to go to the Galus to Eretz Yisrael, just like the Yidden who didn't want to go by the Meraglim and in times of the Tzis and Tzrayim. So even though they saw everything, they didn't want to go. So too is going to be in the times of the Galus. And why didn't they want to go? Because they were stuck in their ways. There's Yehuda Leib Edel. He was very close to the Vilna Goyen, and his son, the Bevram Ben Agara. The Shalom Meshiv to Skama to his Sefer writes fascinating things about him and the Vilna Goyen. The Vilna Goyen called him to be the one to write his Svarim. So he says a fascinating thing in the Sefer Afika Yehuda. He says that in the times of the Geula Shlema, Hashem is going to have to be mafata the Yidden to come up to Eretz Yisrael, and we all know the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The Gemara says, why was the second Beis Hamikdash destroyed? Because all the Yidden didn't come up to the second Beis Hamikdash. If they all would have came up, only a small percent came up. If they all would have came up to the second Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash wouldn't have been destroyed. It's kasha for itself. So he says like this. So he says that the Yidden, were scared that, maybe we're not going to have a Gula Shlema, because maybe we're not going to come up to the third Gula also. Maybe we're going to be stuck. We see for the Yavitz and the Mashah that the Yidden and the Gullus are not going to want to come up. So they were scared. They're not going to be zeichet to the third Gula. Just like the second Gula Yidden didn't come up and got destroyed. So maybe there's not going to be a third Gula either. It'll be a third Gula like the second Gula. It won't be a real Gula. So he says Hashem had to send a Navi and be mafata the Yidden and tell them, be menachem them, don't worry. I'm going to come. I'm going to make sure they all come up. And he says, there's going to come a time they're going to say in your ears that there might be people that are not going to want to come to the Eretz Yisrael. There's going to be a mashpacha, a shavit. In times of the Gula, there might be people like the second Beis Hamikdash that they're not going to want to come up. Just like in times of Bavel, there were people that didn't want to go up. Maybe the people are not going to come up in the third, by the Geula Shlema. So he says, he's going to send to the Yidden, the Mashiach, or whatever, the Matzef is going to send to the rest of the Yidden and Gullus, Igris. They're going to send letters, Yaakov, come up. And he goes on to explain how Hashem is going to be mafata them to come up, to make sure they don't stay there. Obviously, letters nowadays it doesn't mean letters. It means it's just a muscle of way to transfer information. It could be through Muhammad. It could be through how the Hatzlacha there. It could be family. A lot of different ways Hashem could make that letter. But the idea is Hashem is not going to let us stay in it. He's going to be mafata us. He's going to make sure that we all come like that. It should be a Geula Shlema. It shouldn't be a Chatzi Geula and go back into Gullus. But we see from here also that it's not going to be so simple. You're not going to want to go out. We're stuck in our ways. We see it. We're all stuck in our ways. We're all stuck where we are. So Hashem is slowly convincing us to go. But the idea over here is that we see that in the times of the Geula, the Gullus, the Geula, that there's going to be a period of time which is going to be slowly Hashem's going to be. After the 6-day war, many people moved to Eretz Yisrael. After October 7th, many people moved to Eretz Yisrael. There were different periods where Hashem is slowly calling us to come back. But the idea is that the process is a slow process, so we're very not used to this mahalach, and we have to start trying to be more receptive to this hanhagah of the Rebbeinu Shalom with the world. This is something very important. I felt I have to say this before I continue on. A little bit of continuation to the other topics that we discussed until now about the war and Hashem, which started being with us. I hope it's understood. Shav Hatzlacha.